There's a certain weight you carry that others don't seem to notice. It lives in the fluorescent hum of grocery stores, in the sharpness of a sideways glance, in the texture of a stranger's sadness across the room. While the world moves at its regular pace, you're somewhere else, feeling the vibration of every word, the temperature shift in every silence, the emotional undertow of moments others seem to pass through untouched. You don't choose this. It simply is. Like having too many nerve endings, too many receivers tuned to frequencies most people don't even know exist. You've been told you're too much, too sensitive, too emotional, too affected by things that shouldn't matter so deeply. And maybe you've learned to apologize for it, to shrink yourself into something more palatable, more manageable, more normal. But late at night, when you're alone with the echo of the day's stimuli still reverberating through your body, you know the truth. This isn't something you can turn off. This isn't dramatics or weakness or a character flaw you can discipline away. This is the architecture of your nervous system. This is how you were built. The paradox sits here, quiet and persistent. The very sensitivity that allows you to experience beauty, connection, and meaning at profound depth is the same sensitivity that makes ordinary life feel overwhelming. You feel the full spectrum, the ecstasy and the devastation, the wonder and the exhaustion. And in a world that often values toughness over tenderness, your depth of feeling can become a source of isolation rather than connection. This is not about learning to feel less. This is about understanding why you feel so much, and what it means to live fully in a body and mind calibrated to perceive everything the world keeps trying to numb. The sensitivity you carry now has roots that stretch back further than you might realize. As a child, you were likely the one who cried easily, who couldn't tolerate scratchy fabric or loud noises, who seemed to absorb the emotional climate of every room you entered. You walked into your parents' argument and felt it in your chest before a single word was spoken. You sensed your teacher's bad mood before anyone else noticed. You were called dramatic, oversensitive, difficult, and those words, repeated enough times, began to form a belief about who you were. Not different, wrong. Here's what happens in this environment. You learn that your natural way of experiencing the world is a problem to be solved. This creates what psychologists call emotional invalidation, the repeated message that what you feel isn't real, isn't reasonable, isn't acceptable. When a child's sensitivity is met with dismissal instead of understanding, they don't learn to regulate their emotions. They learn to hide them. They learn that their interior experience is too much for others to handle, so they begin the exhausting work of making themselves smaller, quieter, more convenient. The sensitivity doesn't go away. It just goes underground. There's a neurological reality beneath all of this. Research into what's called sensory processing sensitivity reveals that highly sensitive people have nervous systems wired differently. Your brain processes information more deeply, notices subtleties others miss, and has heightened activity in areas related to empathy, awareness, and reflection. This isn't metaphorical. Brain scans show actual differences in how sensory and emotional information gets processed. You're not imagining the overwhelm when you walk into a crowded mall or hear someone chewing loudly. Your nervous system is genuinely receiving and processing more data, more intensely, than non-sensitive people experience. You're working with more volume, more channels, more input all the time. Consider a specific memory. You're 8 years old at a birthday party. The other kids are screaming, running, laughing in that chaotic, joyful way children do. But you're sitting at the edge of the room, hands over your ears, trying to find stillness in the noise. An adult notices and tells you to go play, that you're being rude sitting alone. You try, you join the game, but within minutes you're overwhelmed again by the volume, the unpredictability, the sheer sensory assault of it all. You feel broken. You feel like something is fundamentally wrong with you because joy for everyone else is agony for you. Or this, you're a teenager and a friend tells you about their parents' divorce. They mention it casually, like it's just another fact. But you feel it, the grief beneath their words, the fear they're not naming, the weight they're carrying alone. You go home and can't stop thinking about it. Their pain has become your pain. You lie awake trying to solve their problems, replaying the conversation, wishing you'd said something more helpful. Meanwhile, they've moved on. They're fine. But you're still carrying the emotional residue days later, unable to shake the heaviness of something that isn't even yours. This is the wound. You are built to feel deeply in a world that often mistakes depth for dysfunction. And because nobody taught you that your sensitivity was a different way of processing the world, not a defective one, you learn to see your own nature as the enemy. You learn to fight against yourself instead of understanding yourself. The patterns became ingrained. Override your needs. Push through the overwhelm. Apologize for taking up space. Accommodate everyone else's comfort at the expense of your own nervous system. And so you move through adulthood carrying this conditioning-like, invisible armor that actually makes you more vulnerable. You do this in relationships. You absorb your partner's mood so completely that you lose track of your own feelings. You do this at dinner parties. You smile through conversations that feel like sandpaper on your nerves because leaving early feels like admitting weakness. You do this at work. You stay in the fluorescent lit office even though the lights make your head throb because everyone else seems fine. So you should be too. You wonder why you're always the one who's exhausted. You wonder why rest never quite restores you. You wonder if everyone else has access to some reserves of energy you simply weren't given. In your intimate relationships, you notice this pattern intensifying. Your partner has a bad day, and suddenly their mood is your mood. Their frustration becomes your anxiety. Their silence becomes your spiraling thoughts about what you did wrong. You can sense the emotional temperature shift before they've said a word, and you're already adjusting, accommodating, trying to fix whatever is broken. Meanwhile, you're not sure they even know how you're feeling because you become so skilled at managing your own emotions to make space for theirs. The relationship starts to feel one-directional. You're giving and sensing and adjusting, and they're just existing. Not because they're cruel, but because they don't operate with the same emotional radar you do. The loneliness of being the only one tuning in to these frequencies becomes unbearable. You do this at work too. The open office plan is a special kind of hell. Phones ringing, keyboards clicking, fluorescent lights humming, conversations overlapping. By noon, you're overstimulated to the point of a near shutdown, but everyone else seems fine. They're chatting, laughing, thriving, so you push through, drinking more coffee, taking fewer breaks, forcing yourself to keep pace. By the time you get home, you're so depleted you can barely speak. Your partner asks how your day was, and you can't even answer because forming words feels like too much. You need silence. You need darkness. You need the world to stop sending you information for just a few hours. Your self-worth becomes entangled in this constant performance of normalcy. You do this. You measure yourself against people whose nervous systems work differently and conclude that you're failing. You think, if I were stronger, I could handle this. You think everyone else manages just fine. You pathologize your own sensitivity, seeing it as a weakness to overcome rather than a trait to understand and work with. The criticism becomes internalized. You're too much and not enough simultaneously, too sensitive for the world, not resilient enough to handle ordinary life. And then there's your inner dialogue, the running commentary that never quite stops. You do this. You process every interaction multiple times, analyzing what was said and what was meant and what you should have said differently. Someone gives you constructive feedback at work, and 3 days later you're still replaying it, feeling the sting of it, wondering if they think less of you now. A friend cancels plans, and you immediately spiral into thoughts about whether they're actually upset with you, whether you did something wrong, whether the friendship is dissolving. You can't just let things be. Your mind processes everything deeply, thoroughly, exhaustingly, and people wonder why you're tired. In solitude, the paradox reveals itself most clearly. You do this. You crave alone time desperately because it's the only environment where you don't have to manage sensory and emotional overload. But then when you're alone, you feel guilty about it. You wonder if you're antisocial, broken, incapable of normal human connection. The truth is simpler and more complicated. You need more recovery time than other people because you're processing more stimuli than other people. But you've been conditioned to see this need as a failure rather than a requirement. But here's what nobody told you when they were calling you too sensitive. Your depth of processing isn't damage, it's data. It's information about how your particular nervous system works. And working with it rather than against it changes everything. The reframe begins here. You're not broken, you're highly attuned. And attunement is a form of intelligence that the world desperately needs, even if it doesn't always know how to honor it. Start by recognizing that your sensitivity has a biological basis. This isn't all in your head, or rather it is, but in a literal, neurological way. Your brain processes sensory and emotional information more thoroughly than others. Knowing this allows you to stop treating your needs as character flaws and start treating them as requirements. You need quieter environments. You need more transition time between activities. You need permission to leave the party early, to say no to overstimulating plans, to protect your nervous system the way someone with a physical condition protects their body. This isn't being difficult, this is being responsible to your actual physiology. The next reframe involves grief and permission. You might need to grieve the fact that you can't move through the world the way others seem to. You'll never be the person who thrives in chaos, who can attend back-to-back social events without depletion, who can shake off criticism easily. And that's okay. Once you stop trying to be someone you're not, you can start building a life that actually fits the nervous system you have. This means smaller social circles with deeper connections. This means jobs and environments you choose with sensory considerations in mind. This means relationships with people who understand that your need for quiet isn't rejection, it's restoration. Here's a practice. Begin to separate your feelings from other people's feelings. This is difficult for highly sensitive people because the boundaries are so porous. But practice asking, is this mine? When you feel a wave of emotion. Sometimes it is. Sometimes you're absorbing someone else's anxiety, anger, or sadness, and carrying it as your own. Learning to distinguish between your emotions and ambient emotions is a form of self-protection. It doesn't make you less empathetic, it makes you less depleted. There's a metaphor worth holding. Think of your sensitivity as a finely tuned instrument. Most people are playing radios. They pick up the major stations, the obvious signals. You're a satellite dish. You pick up everything, the faint transmissions, the background static, the signals from stations most people don't even know exist. This makes you remarkable, but it also means you need to be more intentional about what you tune into. You can't receive every frequency at full volume all the time. You'll short circuit. Learning to adjust your reception, to consciously turn down the input when needed, is not numbing yourself. It's survival. The truth is this. Your sensitivity allows you to experience life in high definition. You notice the quality of light at dusk that others walk past. You hear the tremor in someone's voice that reveals what they're really feeling. You sense beauty and pain and truth in places most people overlook entirely. This is not a burden to be fixed. This is a way of being that has profound value. To you, to the people who love you, to a world that often moves too fast and feels too little. You don't need to become less sensitive. You need to become more skilled at honoring what sensitivity requires. You need environments that don't constantly overwhelm you. You need people who don't dismiss your needs as dramatics. You need practices that allow your nervous system to regulate rather than remain in a constant state of overstimulation. You need to stop apologizing for the way you were made. And here's the final reframe, the one that changes the entire narrative. Feeling deeply isn't the opposite of strength. It's a different kind of strength. It takes courage to remain open in a world that teaches you to close off. It takes resilience to keep feeling when numbness would be easier. It takes tremendous power to honor your sensitivity, rather than trying to discipline it into submission. You were not made wrong, you were made awake. And while that comes with challenges the less sensitive will never fully understand, It also comes with gifts they'll never fully access. Your capacity to feel, to notice, to connect, to perceive. This is not too much. This is exactly enough. This is the way you were meant to move through the world. And when you stop fighting it and start working with it, you don't become less of yourself. You become more fully the self you've always been, sensitive, alive, attuned, and finally free to exist without apology.